Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and got another on the water video for y'all today. We are going to be talking about how to fish bluff banks, especially in colder water. The bluff bank fishing tutorial I'm going to give you guys today is going to be for fishing bluffs during the winter time and the early pre-spawn, sort of when the water temperatures in the 40s and 50s, which I think is probably some of the best times of year to fish bluffs. And guys, bluffs are pretty complex structures to fish. There's a lot of different things to them that a lot of people don't realize. There's a lot of subtleties to fishing bluffs. So what I'm going to do today, guys, is I'm going to take you guys on a tour of some bluffs, and I'm going to point out the key features on bluffs that a lot of people may not even realize. There's certain obvious key features. There's about probably a half a dozen key things you need to know about bluffs as far as where the fish position at. We're going to go over all that today. We're going to go over the best lures for it. I'm going to show you guys how to approach the bluffs, how to fish them, how to set the boat up on them. It's going to be a really info-packed video for you guys today. And also, guys, today it is freaking cold out here today. It's probably about 22 degrees right now. If you guys are looking for, and you know, not raining, but if it is, guys, if you are looking for a really good rain suit, guys, check out this Simms Prodry that I got on right here. I got this at Tackle Warehouse, guys. This is the driest rain suit I have ever had in my whole life. If you're like me, you're tired of getting your wrist, wet, your crotch wet. You know, look at those straps on the wrist there. You know, the crotch area on this thing here, I can't see it there, but the crotch area, it'll stay dry even if you're sitting in a boat and it's raining. So I'll put this Simms Prodry rain suit link and my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of the video. If you guys would like to get one through Tackle Warehouse like I did, it's a suit that's going to last you forever, man. It's definitely going to keep you dry. So I just wanted to pass that along. Okay, so anyway, guys, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn around the camera, and I'm going to give you guys a little tour of the key features on bluff banks first, and then we'll get into how to fish them here a little bit later in the video. So here we go. Okay, guys, let's start off talking about what a bluff bank is specifically. Now, here's a prime example of a bluff. A bluff is usually some type of a vertical type wall. You can see there's a high mountain hill right there coming down in some type of a very steep rock configuration. Now, it can be vertical like this, or it can be a little bit different slopes. We're going to give examples. But the main thing about a bluff, what makes it good, is there's access to deep water nearby. So you can see we're about probably 30 foot away from the bank. Water is 31 feet deep there. And then you got the main river channel out here. So you have immediate proximity to deep water. And this is one of the things that makes a bluff so appealing to fish, is that slope and that proximity to deeper water. Now, what is under the water on these bluffs depends, because sometimes it can be vertical wall, sometimes it can be a gradual slope. As you can see now, we're about 20 foot away. It's still 20-some feet of water. This is a perfect bluff scenario. Now, you can catch fish anywhere along the bluffs, but there are going to be high percentage areas. Now, this area we're coming up on here, guys, let me show you. This is one of the key areas you have to remember when you're fishing bluffs, and that is a rock slide. Any irregular feature like this, you can see there's a little gut up there, and if you take a look right there, you can see how the rock slide has come down into the water. Now, this right here, guys, this rock slide comes out into the water. This is a high percentage area. Anytime that you're fishing bluff banks and you see something like this, go to an extra effort to spend a lot of time fishing here, because you can see the vertical wall there doesn't offer as much cover, but with the broken rock here, got a lot of different cover potential. A couple other things on structure on bluffs you may or may not have in the lake you fish. A lot of lakes have standing or submergent timber off of bluffs, because you can see all the timber up there on those bluff walls. It's the same down here. These standing timber or submergent timber like this are also key areas on bluff areas, because the fish like to suspend around this type of stuff. So if you do have standing or submerged timber on the lakes you're fishing, really pay attention to how deep it is, and pay attention on your depth finder. You know, if you see any type of standing timber like that, a lot of times in the cooler weather months, like, you can take a jerkbait or an A-rig and fish it next to that type of timber, and you can definitely catch them like that. Okay, guys, another thing to remember when you're looking to fish bluffs is the slope of the bluff. Like I'm talking about a little bit earlier there, the slope of the bluff into the water has a big impact on how productive that bluff is going to be. Now, some lakes across the country, you know, like Grand Lake, for example, in Oklahoma, you have a lot of bluffs there that they look like bluffs, but they're not true bluffs in a sense because they don't slope sharp enough. So if you have a bluff that, say for example, you know, it's just a nice bluffy looking, you know, stretch like that, and you ever see how far we are from the bank right here? We're probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 feet away from the bank. If you're in a situation like that and your boat's only in like 5 or 6 or 7 foot of water, or maybe 10 foot of water, even if you're 30 foot away from the bluff, that is not going to be a very productive bluff overall. You might be able to catch some fish there, but the good populations of fish, and especially the quality fish, will not be on those flatter looking slope bluffs underwater. So you always want to make sure that you have a pretty steep stair step right off the bluff. Now, it doesn't have to be vertical. In fact, I don't like it to be vertical. I want it to be, you know, ledgy, where it's chunk rocky. Ideally, just like I said before, if my boat is 20 foot away from the bluff, I want the boat to be in about 20 foot of water, maybe 15 to 20 foot. That's like a perfect slope. Okay guys, here's another very key area of a bluff feature. This is what's called a bluff end or a channel swing end. Now, this is characterized, if you can look behind me here, you see how far this bluff runs down here? We're coming to a point right here. This point area is another super high percentage area, and there's a lot of complexity to a bluff point. Now, when you're talking about the sweet spot on a bluff point, it's not just the point that we're going to get up on here in a second. It's the area leading down like 50 to 100 yards before you get to this point. This area, like from right here to the point, is what I call a key staging area for winter and pre-spawn bass. This is one of the areas they really gravitate to in bigger numbers. The rock slides we talked about before, you might catch a fish or two off them, but an area like this, these areas right before you get to the point, you might catch a whole school of fish. Now, as you come to the point, like we're getting up right here, a lot of times the point will start to get flatter. It's not going to turn into a bluff like this. This is another transition area, which is a high percentage area. And once you get to the bluff point, the fish don't relate to the bluffs per se, but they still are in the area and they may use it as like a migration route. Typically, when you get to a bluff point like there, it starts to flatten out, and then based upon the slope of the flat is how going to be deep it is out the water, out off the end of it. Now, when you get to a bluff point, this is when those fish will use a diversity of different water depths. Some of these fish will be suspended way out over deeper water relating to the point. Some of them will be on the bottom in like, you know, 10 to 15 feet of water. Some of them may be suspended shallower over 20, 25 foot of water. But this is a key high percentage area that you have to consider being part of the bluff. It's part of the bluff structure itself. Okay guys, let's have a little discussion on lure selection for bluffs during the pre-spawn in the wintertime when that water's in the 40s and 50s. And then I've got 3 that I want to show you here. Then we're going to go out in the lake and I'm going to show you exactly how I like to fish them and how to set up on them, how to work them and that type of stuff. But first of all, let's have a little talk about lure selection. When you're determining the bait that you want to fish on bluffs during this time of year, there's a couple different things to consider. Number one, your exact water temperature in correlation with your exact water clarity. Because if you're fishing bluffs, say for example, if the water's 42 degrees and the water visibility is 4 foot of clarity, that's going to be completely different than if you are fishing bluffs when the water temperature's 52, 53 degrees and has some off-colored water to it. And there's everything in between. Let's say one situation, you've got really clear, really cold water, and then in the other end of the spectrum, you've got some warmer pre-spawn water, like up to 55 degrees, which is sort of the max cutoff for what we're talking about today, and you may have 2 foot of clarity. So each one of those is going to dictate the lure selection that you have. But for the sake of today's video, we're talking about, you know, typical early spring, late winter fishing. There's 3 different lures that I like to fish, and we'll get into some other stuff later in some later videos. Like as you get later into the pre-spawn, you know, your chatterbaits and spinnerbaits start working, but that's not really what I want to focus on here. There's 3 primary lures that I like to use in the month of like December, January, February, the frame that we're in right now. Okay, the first of it is a jerkbait, and this is the one that I really like here, guys. This is that Megabass X Nanahan +2. One of the things you're going to find out about jerkbait fishing is the smaller jerkbaits traditionally work better. And also, guys, I'll link all three of these lures in my tackle warehouse link description in this video. If you guys would like to pick up some of the X Nanahans and the other two baits I'm talking about, you guys can use that link. But a jerkbait is going to be probably one of my primary weapons. I mean, this is the bait I really, really like to fish this time of year. You can cover a lot of water with it. Fish really react to it good. I'll show you guys how to set it up. But the one thing that I will tell you is try to go to a more downsized jerkbait, something that's under 4.5 inches long. Traditional jerkbaits like that Megabass, the Vision 110, or like a Rogue or any other type of standard jerkbait, 4.5 inches long. That bait can be good under a couple different conditions. If you have a little bit warmer water or a little bit more stained water, the bigger jerkbait. But for most situations, I like the downsized one like this X Nanahan Plus 2. Okay, the next bait is a crawdad pattern crankbait. And my favorite, guys, is this. This is the Megabass Super Z3 crankbait. A lot of guys like a wiggle wart and a rock crawler, which I do too. But one of the things I like about this Super Z3 is it gets down pretty deep and it's got some really good crawdad patterns. Again, I'll link this in my tackle warehouse link in the description. This bait on 10-pound test line is going to get down easily to the 10-foot zone. And a lot of times when that water's cold, that's the zone you need to get it into. And it's got a little bit tighter wobble. I do like the wider wobble of a rock crawler or a wiggle wart once that water temperature gets above 50. But if that water temperature is 50 or below, I like a little bit tighter wobble like the Super Z3. And this time of year, I do prefer some type of a crawdad pattern. So that's my second one. And also, guys, both on the crankbait and the jerkbait, you want to make sure that your bait does not float up. You want to make sure that the bait suspends. So you might take a little suspend strip and put it on the belly or upgrade your hook size, but you do not want a crankbait or a jerkbait floating up this time of year, especially the crankbait. And then finally, and this is for a little bit of a different mood and personality of the fish when they're not chasing, is a finesse jig. This is my Blaukat Power Finesse Throwback jig, guys, from Cumberland Pro Lures. Living rubber frog hair skirt. You got to have living rubber in the wintertime, guys. That is the key to it. And my Power Finesse Throwback jig is one of the few living rubber. See how that thing undulates there? Look at that skirt there, how it undulates. It has a glow in the water. That'll be in my tackle warehouse link in the description too. Any type of a brown or green combination, brown and purple, green and purple, straight brown. I got a Zoom Super Chunk Junior on it. And if these fish are not in a chasing mode, like today, for example, it's bright and sunny, there's not much wind, the finesse jig is going to be a really key bait, this time of year on bluffs. So those are my three main weapons. Now, I will tweak them a little bit. I'll tweak colors a little bit. And like I said, if I get into some situations, say the water's in the low 50s, I may change up to like a wiggle wart, some different colors, and move shallower. But I'm looking to catch fish on these bluffs in two different ways. These bluff fish this time of year, a percentage of them are going to be on the bottom in like 10 foot of water or less. And if it's a little bit cleaner, those fish can be suspended out off those bluffs, 10 or 15 or 20 foot. And that's when like your A-rigs, swim baits, or jerk bait's going to produce. So, okay, guys, let's get up there, and I'm going to show you now exactly how I approach the bluff as far as how I position the boat and make my cast. So here we go. Okay, guys, let's start out with the jerkbait a little bit. I'm going to show you guys how I like to position the jerkbait on these bluffs to catch them. Then we'll go to the other two lures. Now, first of all, one of the things to remember is that the distance that you are going to be off the bank is dependent upon the water clarity. Obviously, the dirtier the water, the more that you can stay tighter to the bank. Cleaner the water, the more that you want to fish out. But most of the time, I like to try to get the boat this time of year, when I'm fishing a jerkbait, probably in about 5 to 15 foot of water. 10 foot would be ideally. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to position it completely parallel. I don't want to be to 45 degree. I want to be completely parallel down the bank. And I'm going to make a long cast parallel to the bank like that, and just really try to target that zone that I feel the fish are in given the water temperature. And working slow and methodically. One of the things about bluff fishing that is a little bit challenging. It's very monotonous. If you're on a bluff that looks the same everywhere, a lot of times you tend to speed up a little bit. But try to just set your trolling motor like at 2 or 3, something like that, and just slowly and methodically work that bait, and don't get in a big hurry with it. Long cast with it, try to get it down that 5 to 10 foot zone. Just parallel that bank like that. Like I said, anytime that you get to some type of a high percentage area, like the rock slide or an irregular feature, and a little outcropping indentation, that's when you want to really slow down with that. Okay, now the crankbait is going to be very similar to the jerkbait in the terms of it's going to be parallel. The thing about the crankbait in the wintertime or the pre-spawn is you're going to have to get shallow enough to hit the bottom. Now jerkbait, you're targeting both those suspended fish and the fish coming off the bottom. Not so with the crankbait. You have got to get shallow enough where you're actually bouncing off the rocks. So therefore, depending upon the crankbait you're using, it's going to have to be adjusted accordingly with that. But the same thing on the crankbait, guys. I'm just going to make a long parallel cast down the bluff bank there, depending how steep the angle is, or what the water clarity is, and I'm always wanting to hit that bottom with it. Now another piece of advice I'll give you on the crankbait for the wintertime fishing is a lot of times I'll throw the crankbait on a spinning rod. That spinning rod, I can put lighter line on it. A lot of times I can make it a little bit deeper, get the bait down a little bit deeper. Just depends on the water clarity. Right now we've got about probably 3 foot of clarity where we're fishing here, so you can get it by with a bait caster with that. But you just want to fish that crankbait, sort of a nice slow retrieve here. Sort of watch my reel hand. It's just sort of a slow retrieve like that, stop and go, letting that thing hit the bottom. In that colder water, you don't want to get it going too fast for sure. And the thing that you're going to find out about a crankbait, if you can get them to hit a crankbait during this time of year on bluffs, they tend to be a little bit bigger fish, even than on the jerkbait. The jerkbait will get you an occasional good fish, but overall, the quality of fish that you catch on a crankbait on these bluffs are going to be a little bit bigger. But like anything else, when you're fishing a moving bait, fish have got to be in the right mood and personality for that bait, for it to be really productive. Nice and slow like that. Okay, now the third bait is going to be the finesse jig. Now this is going to be a different presentation here, because with the finesse jig, we're not concerned about paralleling the bank with it. We want the jig to be hopping down the stair step, and the best way to hop down the stair step is to cast the jig either at a 90-degree angle or a 45-degree angle to the bank, depending upon the slope. So what I do with the jig is I'm going to get a little bit further out. Again, depending upon the water clarity, I'm going to have my boat in anywhere between 15 to 30 foot of water. A lot of times in the wintertime, if you have clear water, these fish will get really deep on the bluffs. I mean, I've caught them, down into, I've caught them down in probably 40 or 50 foot in real clear water. So what I'm going to do with that, like here, I'm about 40 foot off the bank. I'm going to throw in, I'm going to make sort of like a 45 to 90 degree angle cast to the bank. Let that jig hit the bottom. And I don't want to put a lot of action on it. Since the water's cold, I'm just sort of hopping it slow. I'm pulling it like that, hopping, not really hopping it, but just sort of shaking it, almost like a shaky head a little bit. Keep it in contact with the bottom. And one of the things I'm trying to figure out with the jig this time of year is I'm trying to figure out the exact depth that the fish are in. Because again, depending upon water temperature, water clarity, those fish can be anywhere between 4 to 40 foot deep this time of year. So I'm really trying to experiment with a lot of different depth zones until I really key in on it. But the main thing with the finesse jig, guys, is just sort of shake it. You see my rod tip there? I don't know if you can see it. I'm just sort of shaking it, not really trying to hop it too far off the bottom, trying to keep it in close contact with it. And a lot of times the bites are really, really soft this time of year. But that's how I work the finesse jig. Now, one other thing that I'll tell you about this, about these bluffs that fishing this time of year, is if you can catch a few fish on the crankbait and the jerkbait at the same time, a lot of times an Alabama rig will work good. Now, a rig's not my favorite bait to fish for a lot of different reasons, but it will catch you a good fish. If you have a day this time of year where it's windy and cloudy, many times the Alabama rig will outproduce any of these three baits that I'm talking about. But that's just going to be on a day where you got heavy overcast and maybe a 15 to 20 mile an hour wind. So anyway, that's some of the key baits I like to fish. Now let's go over some more aspects of bluff fishing here. Okay guys, got two more examples of some places you really need to pay attention to when you see them on bluffs. Anytime that you have some type of lay down trees in the water like this, lay down logs, lay down, branches, anything, this is another high percentage area. It's pretty obvious, but nevertheless, it's definitely worth your while. Now, when you come up to a piece of wood like this, absolutely the best bait is a jig. Just try to fish around the perimeter of it. Remember that a lot of times the wood's going to come way out into the water, so work your jig out farther away from the water. Sometimes they'll suspend out here, so sometimes you can take the jerk bait and fish it 10 or 15 feet out away from the wood, but never ever underestimate wood on a bluff. And another thing here that you want to look for is, guys, see this shade line here? Shade is a key piece of cover. Now it is cover. I mean, shade, even though it's not hard structure, bass do use it. So pay close attention to any type of shady areas, especially if the water temperature is over 50 degrees. Those fish like to get into the shade on these bluffs. Now the shade will change depending upon the time of the day, but this is a perfect example here, guys. I like to have shade about 5 to 10 feet off the bank. It really positions those fish right on that shade line. Okay guys, let's have a little more conversation about bluffs here, because there's a lot of stuff we haven't covered. When you're talking about the wintertime pre-spawn period, like we talked about earlier today, it's very, very important to realize that there are transitions that are occurring throughout this phase. Because when you talk about, say, the first part of January, when your daylight hours are really short and water temperatures are at their lowest points, usually in January, that is one different scenario. But if you fast forward another month or a month and a half, which you're still in the pre-spawn period, say for example the first or second week of February, the water temperature may be 5 to 10 degrees warmer. I mean, it may be in the low 40s or something like that in January. It may be in the low 50s by the time you get into the end of February. But nevertheless, you're still in the pre-spawn period, and the bluffs are still going to be good. But again, the mood and the personality of the bass change. Now, here's one thing that you're going to notice more than anything else. Once those water temperatures start to approach 50 degrees, or if they start to get 5 degrees warmer than the lowest part they ever were at. Say, for example, in your part of the country, the lowest the water temperature got was 50 degrees. Once you start gaining 5 degrees, or if you're low 40s in your part of the country and you start gaining 5 degrees, the fish will make a shift in how they relate to the bluffs and the baits they prefer. Number one, they're going to start moving a little bit shallower, and they're not going to suspend quite as much, and they're going to start preferring larger baits. So here's one thing to remember. When your water temperatures are cold, go with your small baits. Again, like your crankbait, smaller jerk baits. If you're throwing a swim bait, a little smaller swim bait. If you're throwing an Alabama rig, make sure your swim baits are small. Once that water temperature starts warming up, transition to your larger baits, like a big spinner bait, slow rolling it on a bluff bank is one of my favorite ways to catch a big one. So when that water temperature starts to get like in the low 50s, I'll put on like a 3/4 ounce spinner bait with a number 6 or number 7 willow leaf blade. Possibly I'll put on a big chatterbait, full-size chatterbait, a larger swim bait, like a 4 or 5 inch swim bait, and I'll move shallower. I'll start targeting that water depth less than 10 feet deep, because once that water temperature starts to get about 5 degrees warmer than its colder point, the big fish, the biggest fish in the lake, will move up onto those bluff banks and those channel banks, and they'll get in less than 10 foot of water. And they'll stay there until that water temperature starts to get close to 60 degrees before they start moving into the nearby coves to spawn shallow. So this is the time of year to catch big ones, guys. If I could give you one scenario to catch big fish, it would be fish bluffy type banks or channel type banks in the pre-spawn when the water's in the 50s with those bigger baits. That's when you're going to catch your big ones. Now, another thing about it, fish live on bluffs all year long. We talked just about cold water bluffs today, but bass live on bluffs all year. In fact, if you have a lake that has smallmouth or Kentucky or spotted bass in it, they will even spawn on the bluffs. So don't ever think that you can't catch them on it. Traditionally, the colder weather months are better for bluff fishing. I don't care if your water's in the 40s and the 50s in the spring, or if it's in the 40s and 50s in the fall. That's when your bigger fish will use the bluffs. They still use them in the summertime, but they tend to roam and suspend more, and the smaller fish tend to use the bluffs in the summer. One tip I will give you about fall fishing on bluffs, it's very wind and shade oriented. If you don't have wind and shade on your bluffs in the fall time of the year, it can be pretty tough. You don't need it in the spring. But like anything else, it's just like the seasonalities are a little different. The mood and the personalities of the fish are different. And another thing is bluffs can be pretty inconsistent in terms of you may have a bluff that's got a bunch of fish on it one week, and then the next week you can't get a bite on it. And the reason that is because bluffs are highways for these fish. They will use the bluffs to travel up and down the lake, whether it be out to deeper water, shallow water, into coves, just moving down the lake. And if you happen to hit the bluff when there's some fish on it, you're going to catch them. But don't be surprised if go down a stretch of bluff and don't catch anything. Prime example is today. When I was filming this video about 3 weeks ago on this one stretch of bluff that I went to, I caught 7 or 8 nice fish on a jig. I went down that same bluff today, 2 or 3 weeks later, and never had a bite on it. Prime example of what I'm talking about. They're there one day and gone the next. But you got to learn how to fish them, man. They're one of the top structures on the lake. They don't get fished as much because the uniformity of it, people get bored fishing bluffs. Because if you're on a long bluff and you're not catching them and everything looks the same, it is pretty monotonous to fish there. But nevertheless, it's something everybody needs to learn how to do. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, the on the water video. Shoot me some ideas as far as the type of on the water videos you'd like to see. I'm going to keep doing these videos, in terms of keeping up with the seasonal things that are going on. I'm going to try to keep them real timely throughout the course of the year. We'll keep doing them. I'm trying to get them done once a week, weather permitting. And appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you for the next one.